Hello, and thank you for joining us again today here, ladies and gentlemen, the listeners there. I have got another lovely guest to introduce to you today. His name is Merrick Rosenberg. Hello and welcome, Merrick.
Thank you, Sonia.
It's so nice to have you here. Merrick is the CEO of Take Flight Learning. So let me tell you a little bit more about him, listeners. Merrick, he co-founded Team Builders Plus in 1991 and Take Flight Learning in 2012. And he's the author of Personality Wins, The Chameleon, and Taking Flights. They're 3 books based about tapping into the power of your personality. So Merrick reinvented how we learn about ourselves and the people in our lives, and how you are going to get a taste of that today, definitely. And with this, Merrick has worked with more than half of the Fortune 100 companies throughout the world. So he's always kept on his toes, absolutely, very productive, and apparently has already had 3 interviews today. Is this your 4th today, Merrick?
It is. With my new book out, I've just been hitting the circuit and on TV and radio and podcasts, so I'm having fun.
Yeah, I bet. And this is a very interesting topic, listeners. This is going to help you as both as a business owner, as well as, if you're a manager. It helps you both personally in your personal life as well as in your professional life. I'm very, very passionate and pro this particular topic because I know how much it actually does help a great deal in business and in relationships. And as you just heard there, listeners, that Merrick has got another book there, Personality Wins, which is predicting a little bit about personality types and powers that be. So, Merrick, I'm going to let you give a bit of a context to the listeners there about your story, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, if you go back to 1991, right out of grad school, I discovered team building when I was working on an MBA, and I thought, wow, this is great. You could actually get paid to play games with people. What a concept. So I thought, this would be an amazing thing to be able to teach people about themselves, teach teams how to work together, help companies to create a great culture. And at the time, in the United States, there were a half a dozen team building firms. This was the very beginning. I mean, this was the time when people were up in trees and on zip lines, and that was considered team building.
I remember.
Yeah, it was the world of high ropes and what we called low ropes at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, I would love to do that. And so started Team Builders Plus, still going strong today. And back in 94, a couple years after that, I discovered the personality styles, and I thought, okay, this is where it's at. And I used the DISC model for many, many years and used the styles to not just teach people about themselves, but really teach them how to interact with others. I felt like a lot of times people take these assessments and it's only about you. But the reality is, how you are impacting others is going to create the world around you. And so I spent a lot of time using the styles to help leaders, to help teams, to help individuals to create a great culture and create a life that they wanted to lead. And I've just been having a lot of fun with that. But what happened was I discovered people didn't remember the letters. You go back and they're like, wait a minute, I'm the D, which one is that? I'm like, I just spent a full day with you 2 months ago and you don't remember it. And in about 2010 or so, these birds behind me flew into my world, and that changed everything. I really reinvented how people learn about themselves, and it made it a lot of fun. And now we have a distribution network. We have over 500 trainers around the world that deliver the training programs that I've created and that Take Flight Learning has developed. And it's just been a blast. Love what I do.
Yeah, beautiful. Sounds good. I do remember those days, like I said, and then I think it really did lose a lot of its gravity, and some of us was sort of, when we've gone to some of those team building things, we've gone, oh gosh, this is a bit old fashioned, this is a bit kitsch. And I do remember then the birds coming about, and I thought, you know what, it really does make a whole lot of sense. And I know, through the various different trainings that I've taught people, you're so right that the birds are so much easier to remember. So perhaps for the listeners, look, we will have some viewers here, but for the listeners that are listening and they're going, oh, tell me more, I don't know anything about this, with what these birds mean. So do you want to just give a little bit of background there for our
Sure.
listeners?
Sure, we can have some fun with it.
Yeah.
Let's imagine the eagle. So if
Yep.
you picture someone who has the personality of an eagle, what comes to mind for you?
Oh, well, hello. And we were just talking about it a bit before, so I suppose Donald Trump a little bit.
Donald Trump is dead. Wait, you don't think he's a dove?
Yeah, no. No,
No,
he's definitely an eagle.
but probably with the dial turned up a lot, I think
A lot,
is
yes.
the thing about him. But what do you think? Like the traits of an eagle, like what comes to mind for you?
Oh gosh, well, the traits of an eagle, often what comes to mind to me is that they're very strong, they're very dominant, they're quite on their own, they're not a pack animal, and that they've got a very big picture view, and they can get very laser focused and can swoop with precision. And then, you know what? Last year, I had to do a big trip here in Australia, a very long drive. And we have the wedge-tail eagle. And the wedge-tail eagle, their wingspan, if they're the big ones, is much wider than a car. They're massive.
Wow.
And yes, and there was a hit roo, and I was coming up towards it, and it had its claws in, and it just stood its ground with me in my big four-wheel drive, and
Okay.
it
The
just looked,
confidence.
and the majestic of it was beautiful, but it was also this whole, come on, take me on, I dare you to make me flinch. And
Yeah.
I had to just slow down and swerve around real slow, and just to look at it and go, wow, you hold your ground.
Power of the eagle.
Yes.
A dove finds food and they let out a very soft cooing sound and they say, "Come, join me. I
Yeah.
have found food." An eagle finds food and they let out a loud screech and the message is, "Back off. I've earned this. It is mine." But you see, the beauty of this is, if I were to say, okay, tell me the letter D, you have to memorize the characteristics of a D. But for you, the eagle is intuitive. You picture it and you
Yes.
immediately know. And if it's
Yes.
intuitive today, it will be intuitive 5 years from now. So
Yes.
let's take the dove. So when you think of a dove, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I suppose they're annoying to me a little bit.
That may be your eagle.
Can you tell I'm not that much dumb? Like, oh my gosh, get out of the way. But yeah, they're very much grouped together, and they're gentle, and you can scare them off a little bit, I suppose. And they're always fossicking and busy.
Yeah, exactly. What you see is this, they're the world symbols of harmony and peace and hope
Yes,
and compassion and caring. So,
yes.
so the parrot, this guy behind me, he's got a big smile. When you think of a parrot, what comes to mind?
Talkative.
Yeah. If you are in a forest or in a rainforest with a group of parrots, the
You
one
hear
thing
them
you will
mile off.
notice is how loud it is.
Yep.
And people are like that too. One of my sons is the parrot, and we always used to, when we were little, I wanted to play the quiet game. Like, can you just be quiet for 5 minutes? And one day my wife looks at him, and he was a little kid, and she turns to him and she goes, we were on a road trip, we were driving somewhere, and she said, can you just
Good
be
luck.
quiet for 5 minutes? And with a clarity and self-awareness of an 8-year-old child, he looked at her and said, I don't think so. Because the parrots, they're talkative, they are energetic, they're social, they're
Yes.
optimistic, they're fun.
Yep.
How about the owl? Now that has a very different energy than the parrot. What do you think
Yes.
of that one?
Well, a lot of people think owls are, they're smart, they're figuring things out. But if I really think about the bird, again, they're very precise. They are a hunter, and they're very focused on that. But again, they're aloof, but they also do. They seem a little nurturing as well. So yeah, they, you know, and then, like I said, they had that connotation of the smarts.
And we always think of every cartoon owl that's ever
Yeah.
drawn as pictured as wise. And that's
Wise,
because they're
yes.
so observant and thoughtful. And if
Yes.
they're going to do something, it's very precise and sharp and accurate, and they have a
Yes.
plan. I was talking one day, I'm the parrot style. That is my primary style. And nobody's just one. I'm a parrot eagle. We're all a combination of them, but there's probably one or two which are like home base. And
Yep.
I'm more of the parrot. My wife is more of an owl. And I was driving to a meeting one day, and she had said to me, "So where are you headed?" And I told her, and she's like, "Where is that? I have no idea where you're going." I was trying to describe it, and she said, "Well, how far is it?" And I said, "Yeah, 2 hours. It's probably about 2 hours." I said, "Hold on one second. I'm going to guess 2 hours. Well, let's see." Pulled out my phone, typed it in. I'm very proud of myself as a parrot. I look at the phone, 1 hour, 59 minutes.
Oh.
And I'm pretty happy. My wife looks at me as the owl and says, "So you're wrong." Is welcome to my world of the owl, because for the owl there's a precision and an accuracy, and it's everything they do. And so what we just did there is, I don't have to necessarily teach people about the four birds, because they're so intuitive, they already
Mm,
get them.
mm,
And what that allows me to do, instead of spending a half day or a full day workshop teaching them a model, I spend the whole day talking about application and how you can use it in your life.
yes.
Because you don't have to memorize this, it's already there, you get it. I can spend the entire time talking about how to apply it to create the life you want to lead.
Oh, I love that. I love that, because that is the most important thing. I've been the technical trainer and teacher, and then also then the trainer, and then the coach of the application. And sometimes when you're teaching the technical part, and I've noticed a lot of people, they'll get lost in that. And how do you then apply it? And really, at the end of the day, being also then having been a student at the end of the day, you go, well, what does that mean to me, and how am I going to take this away? And that's the most important thing, is that how are
Yeah.
people going to continue to apply it? Yeah.
Yeah, are you using it? You can. Most people go to these personality style training programs, and it is absolutely fascinating, because
Yeah.
let's face it, if there is any topic that is infinitely interesting, it's ourselves.
Yeah.
And so they go to these programs and they're like, "Wow, that was really amazing." But then you ask them 2 weeks later or 2 months later, "Are you using it?" And they're not. And
Yes.
I'll go back 2 years later, and
Yes.
people are saying to me, "I use that all the time," because it's so simple and it's so intuitive. And that to me has been like my life journey, is to teach people about themselves, because the happiest, most successful people are the most self-aware people. People who
Absolutely.
know themselves. And if you can read other people and adapt to them and satisfy their needs, instead of impose your personality on them, because we think our way is the way. George Carlin has this great quote. He said, "Everyone driving slower than me is an idiot, and everyone driving faster than me is a maniac." We think our way is not just a way, it is the way, and then we
Yes.
impose it on others. So instead
Yes.
of imposing our personality on others, let's know ourselves, understand them, and then treat them the way they want to be treated.
Beautiful. And you also, when you were talking there, it made me think of, the adaptability, the flexibility, how to then be, um, rather than opposing yourself onto others. It made me think of EQ, emotional intelligence. And that's really had quite a lot of a comeback recently. And I can't remember quite who said it, but they did say that the organization that has the most EQ will always be the winner, or always be the one, that the organization that'll achieve its objectives, that will be stand the test of time and continue to be there. And so I've known a lot of people that are getting back into it, and how you work it in with personalities. Um, so it's another new evolution sort of happening at the moment. And then when like I
Yeah.
said to you even earlier, you've got the chameleon, and I haven't done the deep dive into that with the chameleon, but it makes me think then, well, actually, I think you have found it, and how you've applied it. So I'm very curious. Please share with us what the chameleon
Well,
is all about.
so the chameleon is about increasing your emotional intelligence. And if you think about what is EQ, the people with the highest level of emotional intelligence are the happiest and most successful people.
Yep.
And what is EQ? It's got 4 components. And this is what being the chameleon is. 1, knowing yourself. Okay, I understand my personality and my style. But 2, self-regulation. Can you manage your behaviors? Can you control those emotions so that you respond instead of react? So self-awareness and self-regulation. But then there's this social awareness. Can you read other people quickly? Do you look at them and say, I understand what they need? And then can you flex and adapt to them, which is the chameleon. Chameleons are flexible and adaptable. So the 4 birds, in a sense, are the skill set of emotional intelligence. It's what helps people to develop that skill. And does it take energy to flex and adapt? It does. But I always tell people, I'll use a sales example. I'll tell people, look, if you're selling someone and their style is different from yours,
Yep.
one of you is going to leave that interaction exhausted, and
Yep.
it better be you. Because if you are expecting your customer to adapt to you, that's a problem. Or if you're a manager and expecting your direct reports, your team members to adapt to you, that's a problem. And as a parent, if you're expecting your children to adapt to you, you're not honoring who they are. So if you're the chameleon, what you're doing is, in an emotionally intelligent way, you're flexing and adapting to what the people around you need in that moment. And when they get their needs met, guess what else also happens? You get your needs met.
Absolutely. I automatically think of, there's a lot of people that tend to do that quite naturally. And I automatically, before you said it, thought of sales and people that do salesmanship, similar sorts of job roles and even networkers. They seem to have it quite naturally. But I think that that's also that they realize that they have to be a whole lot more adaptable. However, all of the different job roles are involved with having a business, running a business, organizing a business, executing that business, all of that, we all still need to have this skill set of the chameleon, because we all have to interact with human beings. Not too sure how that's going to go into the whole AI area in another decade. We'll see where we're at then. Scary. But it really makes me think that it's such an important skill set to learn. And thinking back conversations that I've had with other people, I know that some people have say that if they're a dove, probably more so that if they're a dove, that they would feel more exhausted to bring on that energy of the chameleon. What would be your take on all of that?
Yeah, it takes just as much energy for the dove to be direct and assertive as it does for the eagle to dial up empathy. And it takes just as much energy for the owl to dial up parrot enthusiasm as it does for that parrot to focus and work on spreadsheets and crunch data all day.
Yeah.
So it's not that any one style is more exhausted when they flex. It's that each style is going to find a area that they find challenging. And if you were to take an assessment, what you'd find is that one style that's the lowest for you, that's going to be the hardest one for you. That's the one that's going to get you in trouble every now and then. Because if you don't have the dove, you don't express empathy and compassion. If you don't have the owl, you probably make mistakes. If you don't have the parrot, you're not cheering people on. If you don't have the eagle, you're not focusing on goals. So there's going to be a time when you're going to need to display every one of those styles. And the one that is the hardest for you probably gets you in trouble every now and then.
Yes. I've definitely had to work on my dove. And it depends
Sometimes
on...
we staff our weakness, though. My owl is definitely my lowest. And at work, I surround myself with owls. They make sure everything is done properly. And they walk in my office and say, I'm sorry, but I have a whole bunch of questions. I'm like, I love your questions. You make sure that things happen and they're done properly.
Yep. I often say to people, hey, they're in business, and especially because I've also worked in the RTO world, which is registered training organizations, and the compliance. And hello, as far as compliance, because over here in Australia, they're ridiculous with their compliance. And it's like, I've always said to people, make the owl your best friend. They will always cover your butt.
Not many parrots go into compliance.
No,
This is
exactly.
an owl world where they revel in data and processes and systems, and they thrive in that world. I had an
I
owl
know.
say to me recently. She said to me, "Spreadsheets are my meditation."
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
as a parent, I'm like, "Your meditation? Oh my gosh, not my meditation."
I like it. I have it as a fairly high skill set, but it's not my natural go-to. And so when I got into that whole compliance world, I went, I'm just going to let you do that. Yeah, I don't need to be anywhere near that because,
And I really am not
whoa.
authorized to do that. I should, when it gets very detailed, my team members will be like, we'll take that from you. I'm like, why, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm glad you recognise that. That's something that's not quite my forte, but you know. I have a couple of other questions here. So we've been talking a little bit, and we've touched on quite a few, and I think that we'll end off with the powerful one, which is similar to where we were just talking about. But the first one is around, well, how can someone use their personality to drive success?
Well, the key is you have to be using your personality. That is so often I encounter people that are in a role that does not reflect who they are. You're an owl and they spend hours every day maybe having to network with people, and that's just uncomfortable.
Yeah,
You have a parrot who has to spend their day in spreadsheets and data, and it doesn't resonate with them. That what I would first tell people is find a job that resonates with who you are. Because if your personality is reflected in what you do, every day is easy and it's fun and energizing. If your personality is not reflected in what you do, you're going to go home every day exhausted. So
mm,
the first thing is find a role that feeds you, that nurtures who you are. And if you do, work will be enjoyable. For an owl, if they spent their day crunching data, they may finish the day and say, hey, that was a great day. Whereas the parrot needs a drink. And so you have to, first of all, is find a role that allows your personality to shine.
nice, yes, and of course that then would bring about that you closer to being successful for whatever you're trying to achieve a whole lot quicker and a whole lot easier. I like that because that's leverage. I'm all about leverage, 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 leverage.
Well,
So
it's about
then,
leveraging your personality. Let
yeah,
your personality shine every day. In fact, I do something with my team members every year where we take a look at everybody's roles and we look at everything they do, everything on their plate. And we say, what doesn't feed you anymore? Maybe you're very good at it, but it no longer nurtures your soul. And if it doesn't feed you, then we need to find a way to get that off your plate because
mm,
you're going to go home exhausted every day. And maybe that role can move to someone else and we can find something else for you that will feed you. And when you have your employees, if you yourself are doing things that feed you, you will love what you do.
mm, mm. I like that. I like that. I like the the language that you use around that. It's very encouraging instead of right and wrong, instead of what you're not good at, or because when we do SWOTs, strengths, challenges, opportunities, or sorry, I did it straight away, didn't I? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. SWOT. And a lot of people don't like the word weaknesses, so we tend to use the word challenges,
Sure.
but a lot of people know it as, okay, well, what's your weakness? But it's not that you have to be weak as per se. It's just that it's a challenge. So I like your language around that as far as, well, what's feeding you and what's not, because a lot of us, we can do a lot of things, but do we need to?
Yeah, and I'll show you. Sometimes it's that our personality gets in our way because we dial it up too much. And
Yeah.
so take someone like an eagle, and there's an expression, any virtue carried to an extreme can become a crime. So you
Yes.
take anything And too much of a good thing, not a good thing. So take an eagle and dial up eagle energy. Assertiveness becomes aggressive.
Yes.
Directness becomes blunt and insensitive,
Mm.
offending people. For a parrot, I mean, how can you have too much optimism? Well, dial that up and now it's unrealistic. You're just too
Yes.
out there and it's just not grounded. Too much energy coming at you. It doesn't even seem genuine. How can you have too much love if you're the dove style? Don't we need more love in this world? Well, dial that up and you get smothering. It's like that grandmother who's like, eat, eat. Here, I'm going to put more on your plate. Take it home with you. You can afford it. Here, I'm going to give it to you. And it's like, it's love, but it's too much.
Yes.
And for the owl, well, how can something be too right? Aren't we seeking perfection? But when you dial that up too much, people can't make decisions because everything has to be so perfect, they can never declare it done. They can't make decisions. And so sometimes what happens with people is that they're overusing their strengths, that their style isn't a weakness. They're just overusing it. And if you dial it back down to a healthy level, now you're in that sweet spot where your personality is serving you instead of working against you. But I never look at personality as a weakness. Sometimes you're just overusing it. Dial it back just a bit so now that it's helping you instead of hindering you.
I love that. I really do. Because again, thinking about the SWOT, some people then they just get so carried away with their strengths. It's like, no, what we're supposed to be doing is trying to work on everything so that we can become quite well balanced. Again, depending on the job role and depending on what's needed. If you become too strong, the rest, it's too much. I'm
Yeah,
sort
it
of
works
also
against you.
thinking,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, straight away, as you were talking, I was thinking of a couple of people that I know in my life. But then I suppose even if you look at it as an athlete, and again, if it's too much in one way, you're not balancing out on other things in your life. And
It's like
again,
it's like they're pushing that needle too far and into that red zone.
yes,
And you've got to bring it back into a place of balance so that it serves
yes.
you instead of now it hinders you.
Yes, exactly. Instead of having the rest and or having the emotional time out and the mental time out. It just makes sense in so many ways. I love that. Another question I have for you. So how can personality inhibit someone's success? So we've talked about it as far as with dialing it up too much. Let's talk about then the success of a business. Like if the business is becoming really quite successful and things are just, these doors of opportunities are opening and opening and opening, how can that then, the personalities inhibit that success?
Well, what happens for a lot of people is they get so stuck in their style that they lack the flexibility to relate to anybody they meet. And when you have somebody, for example, who is that chameleon, if you can be direct when you need to be direct, compassionate when you need to be compassionate, focus on the details when you need a plan and a process, generate energy when you need to generate buy-in and support and excitement. If you can do all four of those, you can interact with everyone. But if you have one or two styles that are so low for you, you can't tap into them, you're going to have a hard time building relationships with certain people. It's like the salesperson who says, that type of person, I just have a hard time selling them. When they walk through the door, I know I'm never going to sell them. Yes, because you're probably selling people like you. And so your personality works against you and inhibits your success if you lack flexibility. If
Mm,
my owl is low, but I can be an owl if I need to be. Now, is it exhausting? It can be exhausting if I had to do that all day, but I can tap into it. If I couldn't tap into it, that would be a problem. And my personality in that case would be a challenge for me because I wouldn't be able to do the things I need to do to be successful.
nice. So when we look at personalities, perhaps you might want to define what your take is on personality, because people will look at, well, there'll be some people that are very much adaptable to that chameleon style and say, well, but isn't it more that it's a skill set and I can just tap into that? I wasn't born that way compared to the way I am now. And then other people will be saying, okay, well, yes, I'm born that way. So how on earth can I tap into the rest? So yeah, let's talk about a
Well,
personality.
first of all, anybody can display any behavior. It may take energy to display a behavior that's not as hardwired for you, but anybody can display any behavior. And if anyone who has maybe two children, you know that even when they were very little, they were completely different.
Mm.
If you have a sibling where you have two cousins that you've watched grow up, that you know there was nothing you did as a parent that could have turned your owl child into a parrot. I have one owl child. He is an engineer. When he was young, he dissected everything. He would take things apart. My parrot child is a skateboarder. There is nothing he isn't willing to try. There is no planet upon which my parrot child was going to be an engineer. And my owl child, he was never going to be the parrot who wants to stand in front of an audience in front of hundreds of people. There's hardwiring there. And so we are who we are. And we just have to honor that. We have to honor that there is some hardwiring. And I will say this, though, we do change over time. There are people who, as they grow, their style adapts. The role that they're in the workplace actually can cause their style to change. It pulls out certain behaviors, and the more you display that behavior, the more you're laying down hardwiring. And the more you lay down that hardwiring, the more that behavior becomes comfortable and a part of your repertoire of skills that you have. And so, yes, you can display any behavior. A parrot can be great at time management, but it's probably a learned skill as opposed to an innate skill. Owls come out of the box hardwired to be good at managing time. They're structured, they're organized, they have a plan and a process and a system. But parrots can be very organized, but they probably learned it, and they have to constantly work at it so that time doesn't like spiral away from them. Then they have to reel it back in and say, okay, I lost a little track there. Now let's bring it back to where we need to be. But anybody can display any behavior.
Yeah, totally. Gosh, yes. Yeah. So I'm thinking again myself, oh gosh. Oh, I used to be shocking with the time management, shocking. But that was something that I mastered over the time, and it's that learnt skill because it drove me nutty. But yes.
I will bet, like, as probably maybe more, I'm going to guess maybe some parrot and some eagle playing out there for you.
Oh,
And so what happens is that a lot of times those parrots and eagles, they've had experiences where they felt the pain of not being structured and organized. For example, they go to university, they go to college, and then they wait till the last minute to do that project or to write that paper, and they felt the pain of it. And they say, that's it. I am never doing that again. And then the next semester comes, and they do it again, and they say, that's it. I am really never doing it again. And then the next semester comes, and then they're a little more organized. And by the time they're a senior, they have developed time management skills. Whereas the owl, day one, starts working on it. They say, I'm not waiting till the last minute. This is going to take a lot of my time. They were already organized. And so most parrots and eagles, they have to learn time management. And yet they can be very good at it, but it's an acquired skill.
Yeah, definitely. It took me about 20 years, but you know. Oh, well, look, you know, to be really, really, really good. Yeah, and vice versa. But there are a lot of other people with lots of different other skills. One of my last questions here is that how can personality be used to create a successful culture? One of my mottos is, if cash is king then for business, then culture is queen. So culture is just so important. And yet, you know, I've seen so many people when they're trying to create team effectiveness to be able to grow their business, it's the personalities that tend to come out and play conflict. So
Oh yeah.
give us some guidance, please.
So you know, I've always said culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
That every company has strategies, but if you have a winning culture, that's the difference maker. And what a lot of managers do is they create a culture in which they will thrive, as opposed to an environment in which their people will thrive. So let me give you an example. You are a parrot manager. is it likely that you create a very free-flowing, here's your goals, you're empowered, I trust you, go for it.
Mm,
You're an empowering parrot manager. But what if you have an entire team of owls? How
mm,
will they feel? You don't need structure, you don't need process. I trust you, make it happen.
mm,
How's an owl going to feel in that type of environment?
mm.
They're
Yeah.
going to feel like it's unstructured. I need a framework. And now picture an owl who creates, they're the manager, they're the leader, they're the CEO or the head of the department, and they create a very formalized processes and standard operating procedures and tracking and documentation, and everything is data driven, yet they have a whole world of parrots who report to them. How are those parrots going to feel?
Mm,
Like caged in. And so what leaders do is that they make this deadly mistake of creating culture for themselves instead
mm,
of creating culture for their people. And you have to think about, am I creating a culture in which everyone can thrive, or am I creating a culture in which only people like me can thrive?
mm,
And to your point, culture is so significant. And people, who do they quit? They don't quit the company. They quit the manager. They quit the work environment. They say, I just didn't like it there. Yeah, you know why? Because you didn't resonate with your manager and you didn't like the culture, and they go somewhere else and do the same thing at a place where they connect with the culture. And they
mm,
probably have a manager who created a place that they felt comfortable
mm. Definitely. Definitely. I also sometimes I have seen then people say, oh, well, we've created this culture. Well, actually, no, you've employed people like yourself. So really what is there is a difference with creating a great culture for what's needed for the organization and what's needed for ultimately it's you reverse engineer it from your clients and your customers for what they need, because its culture will come out in all of your strategies. It'll come out in all of the processes and operations. Therefore, you need to really employ according to the culture that you want. So then what guidance could you give some people if they need to employ according to the culture, but they've got to have these various different sorts of personalities, do these various different types of job roles? What guidance could you give them for that?
in. The first thing I always tell people is you need to be a co-creator of culture, not a passive recipient of culture. That
Mm,
you have to consciously and with intention create the culture. And you have to recognize that there are going to be departments that have a very defined style that may be different than other departments. You go into finance and IT, and you're going to find a very owl world. You
yes.
go into sales and human resources, and you're going to find more of the parrot world. HR has a lot of doves, has a lot of parrots. They're very connecting. And you go into a hospital, you talk to the doctors. I find I've worked with a lot of hospital systems around the world, and a lot of doctors are eagles, a lot of nurses are doves. And you
Mm,
have to accept that. And when you create the culture, you have to carve out that niche so that everyone will feel accepted in this environment and honored. And if you have someone who is different, I always say you have that one person who's different from everyone else. How do you treat that person? Do you treat them and ostracize them for being different? Or do you say, you are different than all of us, and honor that and say, you're probably the most valuable person on this team because you're going to make sure that if they're the owl, that we don't make mistakes. If they're the dove, you're going to make sure that we care about people and make decisions that honor people. If you're the parrot and you're that one parrot, that you bring fun and energy and excitement. If you're the eagle, that they keep you focused and on track. And so you have to consciously create an environment by considering the styles and make sure everyone can feel comfortable in that culture.
mm, mm. Love that. Love that. Love that. And then, of course, there's the chameleon.
That the chameleon can do all of them. A
Yeah.
chameleon is, it was funny because my last book, it's called The Chameleon: Life-Changing Wisdom for Anyone Who Has a Personality or Knows Someone Who Does. I figured that should cover everyone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
I
all
like
about
that.
how do you be the chameleon? How do you connect with anyone? And look, let's face it, if you have somebody who can connect with eagles and doves and parrots and owls, they can thrive in the job they have, in
Yeah.
any role. If they can only connect with certain types of people, they're going to have challenges, whether it's their coworkers, their customers, their vendors. If you can't connect with one of those styles, it's going to get you in trouble.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I'm seeing the ability, and I suppose maybe a lot of people will be thinking and listening to this and thinking there could probably be really that middle management or that manager who's across quite a few of the different departments. And then I was thinking, that's even really quite effective for media management. So because you've got so many different styles that are out there in the media land, that if the organisation needs to be represented to that, I could see then really to learn a lot more of the skill set of what's required for a chameleon type of job role. It would be very important to do that for lots of different reasons, for the various different types of facets for that business and the stages that the business goes through. Because we've got lots of listeners here that are either they're a micro business or a small, medium and large business. So all of this information that you've brought to us, Merrick, and to the listeners is going to help in no matter what type of business or industry that they're actually in, and also on, as you've also mentioned, in our personal life, so with our loved ones and with our children, and how to have that happier family.
Absolutely. And look, you can take as you just said, take media, like take messaging when you're communicating to the world, to the public about your customers, about your products and your services. Who do you appeal to? Do
Yep.
you appeal to people like you? For example, if you have a chameleon-like message, you may talk about the results that your product gets. You may talk about how exciting and new and different and life-changing this is going to be. You
Mm-hmm.
may be reassuring, we're going to be there for you. We're going to help you. We're going to support you. You're going to be someone who provides the details to explain the features and the benefits and how you use it. But if you're only communicating, maybe your PR person is a parrot and they're like, it's awesome. You're going to love it. But does that appeal to the owls who have no idea what is awesome?
Yeah.
What does it do? How does it work?
Please
So
explain.
think about your messaging so that you're communicating to all four styles. So no matter who reads it, they will connect with it.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really, really implore people that are listening to this to just rewind and listen to all of that, and particularly that what you said there in Merrick, with just before you finished off there, is you actually in that you covered all four of those birds in that message. Which is so important when you're having to deal with the media. You need to deal with, or whether you're doing mass communications, you need to give that one piece of message, but to have a different bit of it in that message for each of those different birds, which is fabulous. It excites me that there's people like you that are spreading this to help so many others, because this is like an underpinning fundamental for business and our communities and for our personal life as well as professional life, which is just so fabulous. So then tell me, what's in the horizon for you for the remainder of 2020?
I'm actually working on something I've always wanted to do. I'm so excited about it. It's a children's profile. We, of course, have adult profiles. You can take assessments and see what your style is. But this one is so different. You take the assessment, or the child takes the assessment, and then they get a report that tells them about them. What is their superpower? What makes them so awesome and special? But then there's a section in the report for the parents. How do you parent that child? And a section for their teachers or coaches. How do you work with that child in a sports setting or in a school setting? So it's all about honoring who that child is, and as a parent, how do you teach a child and work with a child who's very different from you? For example, let's say you're the eagle parent and you've got a dove child, and your dove child is very sensitive, and you're like, you can't cry all the time. That's not you'll never be successful. And what are you saying to that child? You're saying who you are is not okay.
Yeah.
What you have to understand is you have to honor their inherent nature and value it and nurture it and support it. So coming up, we've been working on it for a while. It's coming out. It'll probably be early next year, but it's really exciting because I feel like this is the next generation. This is helping
Absolutely.
children to understand themselves. If maybe I heard, if there's one sentence I hear more than any sentence, it starts with this: I wish I knew this before.
Yes.
And it's filled in with interesting things like before I became a CEO, before I started working, before I got married, before I had kids. But I wish I knew this before. And I taught this to my children when they were 6. And they literally, we could go to a restaurant and the server comes by and takes our drink order and they can say, she is a parrot.
Yeah.
He is an eagle. They instantly recognize the styles and they
Yeah.
respect them because
Yes.
they honor who people are. They understand them. So it's time to bring it to the next generation.
I love it, love it, love it. And I love how that you're not just, excuse me, you're not just keeping it to the silo of the individual. You're integrating it with those that work and connect, and who are connected and influence with that individual. So the parent, the teacher, the sports or the coach. I love it, love it, love it, love it. And it's like right now I'm going, duh. Like, of course that's the next
It's
thing.
like that's their team. These people should be nurturing and supporting them. So, I mean, how many parents have you seen send the message that who you are is not okay because they try to change their child to be someone who they're not? And that creates self-esteem issues. But if we can say whatever they are, it's okay. And not just okay, it's great. And so let's honor our children for being who they are and help them, because guess what? They're going to find a job that they will thrive in because they're going to use their personality to allow them to be successful and happy. So let's not try to change them. All 4 styles can be very successful. Let's let them be who they are.
Absolutely. Ugh. Right, people, we need to get together on this. We, are the future of our generations, and what we can achieve is just so beautiful and so empowering, and that's seriously lovely. I really, really enjoyed interviewing you today, Merrick, and I'm sure all the listeners have really enjoyed listening to it as well. Is there something you would like to offer them?
Yeah, if you go to, now in the US, if you text, so you'll have to add the country code in here, but in the US, if you text the words personality wins, all one word, no space in the middle, it's the name of my new book, text the word personality wins, it's all one word, to 33777. They can take an assessment, a complimentary assessment, and answer the question, which bird am I? And you might find you're a parrot. Maybe you're an eagle dove. Maybe you're an owl parrot. Maybe you're a dove owl. But it will tell you what your style is and give you a little information about who you are and how that plays out in the world. So it's personality wins. Text that to 33777. Remember to add a country code in there too.
Beautiful, lovely. And as the listeners know, I will make sure that I put that on the page, the website page, the soniaclark.com, in the podcast area on your individual page, so they can always go there and find that too. And before we do our final last see you later, is there any last minute things you might want to say to the listeners?
If there's one thing you can do, there's one piece of advice that is life-changing. It's don't impose your personality on the people around you. It's know yourself, know others, and don't impose your style on them. Honor who they are and treat them the way they need to be treated.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your pearls of wisdom there. And so eye-opening for a lot of people, as well as for others to come back and to revisit and to go off and to have a really good think and reflection and readjust their movements forward. So thank you for that.
Well,
and
thank you, Sonia, for
I
sharing
wish you a
your light with
lovely
the
evening.
world.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.